Welcome to Nerdcultuur, and today we're discussing another Indian movie, so we're doing this video in English again. The one we're talking about today is Brahmāstra Part 1 Shiva, and I actually wanted to see this movie when it was playing in theaters here as well. But I didn't get around to it back then, but now it's playing on Disney Plus internationally, and apparently it's found quite an audience on there. And that's probably a good thing, because the director of this movie always envisioned this as the start of a new cinematic universe that's supposed to also consist of different series and movies. But he's starting this universe out with a trilogy of movies, and apparently it's all based around Indian weapons, like mythical weapons. I do wonder how much of that is actually based on real Indian lore and mythology, because I do think that's quite an interesting part of this whole universe. In some aspects it kind of reminded me of the anime Bleach, both in combat and like the visual style of some of the weapons, but also just the whole concept of all these different weapons being so important. But the Brahmāstra, that's apparently like the most overpowered weapon of them all, and that's like the MacGuffin of this movie. They're trying to gather different parts so they can form this weapon. And our main character Shiva is played by the same actor who I recently saw in Shamshira, but I do think he did better in this role. Because a very large part of this movie is about his relationship with his love interest, and I did think that was done pretty well. And the whole movie takes place in modern day, but you're dealing with ancient weapons, so there's also a bunch of flashbacks, and the whole scale of this movie does feel pretty big. And I know this happens a lot with Indian movies, but because it's like this big epic story and it's quite a long movie, it does feel like a whole journey. And watching this movie on Disney Plus, they didn't provide me with the option to watch the original dub, which is always the way I prefer to watch these types of movies. But I did think the English dub was done actually pretty well, and all the actors also have Indian accents, so it does kind of give you the feeling that you're still in India. And one of the actors who plays in this movie I know from wrestling. He's the NXT wrestler Sangha, and he's like one of the main villains in this movie. And listening to him in English, it did sound a lot like his voice, so that did kind of make me wonder if Indian actors always do their own dubs, if they're able to speak English. But yeah, I do have to give credit to Sangha for playing quite an intimidating villain, and I'm very curious to see if he does have a bigger career in Bollywood going forward. But he's not the main villain. The girl who actually plays the main villain was also quite impressive, but they do kind of set up a bigger villain for the rest of this universe, because apparently the next movie, Part 2, is called Dev, and that one does focus on the villain of this story. So we're going to see a story told from a villain's perspective, which is quite rare. So it does kind of make me wonder if they're trying to go for a redemption arc, so you can kind of have father and son together, working together in the final part. Especially considering this is supposed to be a universe that's bigger than just this trilogy. You're probably going to need some different bigger villains to keep it interesting in the future. But yeah, because this whole universe is based around the different weapons, it's kind of cool to see how they sort of apply these weapons in different situations. In that aspect, it kind of reminded me of the anime Bleach, where the swords are also kind of a major part of the story, and everybody has their own like different type and ability. And I have to say, for an Indian production, the special effects on this thing were actually quite good, because they need a lot of them. The whole movie is kind of filled with it, and you definitely notice they rely on it heavily throughout this movie, but it's also kind of necessary for the type of action and the type of weapons they're demonstrating. And for a movie that's around 2 hours and 40 minutes long, I did think it had quite a nice pace to it. There was always something happening, and I was happy to see that at least for the songs in this movie they did keep the original Indian dub, because it would have been quite weird to see like an English translation of that. But yeah, the main character has quite a nice little arc, and throughout this movie you kind of learn more about him and his backstory, because apparently his family is also quite important. And since he's supposed to be the person who eventually wields Brahmāstra, which is supposed to be the strongest weapon, it can get a little bit risky to have a character that's like too overpowered. But in this first movie he doesn't have full control of his abilities yet, so you kind of see him progress throughout, and it will be interesting to see in the third movie how they kind of approach this massive power he gains. Because it seems like the second movie will be a prequel, and they kind of do like the Shazam and Black Adam approach, where they each kind of get their own movie, and then in the third movie they'll probably clash with each other. So yeah, I did think this first movie was a pretty good introduction to this new universe, and I'm definitely going to keep my eye open for new content within this universe. Because apparently it will be until 2025 before we get Brahmāstra Part 2, but hopefully they'll also do some different spin-offs or TV series or something. So as far as I know, they haven't revealed revealed like a Brahmāstra phase 1 timeline or something, but once they do, let me know. I'd definitely be interested to keep an eye out for it. Yeah, did you guys get to watch Brahmāstra Part 1? Did you see it in theaters or on Disney Plus? Let me know what you thought of it. Thanks for watching my review and subscribe to this channel to keep up to date with everything going on in Nerdcultuur.